Welcome to the Rapport Advantage podcast, transforming the way leaders communicate. Here's your host, human behavior expert and professional speaker, Alex Swire-Clark.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm fired up today. It's been a while since I've been on the pod, but I am here with my buddy, Frank Somma. And I got to start out by saying, Frank, you're a liar, man. You're lying in your bio on your website because it says you enjoy, when you're not out there doing your speaking stuff, you enjoy making homemade pasta for my kids and my grandkids. Dude, you're not that old. You don't have grandkids. Get out of here with that mess.
I have 3 of them, actually, and 2 of them are downstairs right now because my wife's watching them. 4 years old, 3 years old, and 10 months.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, again, really you look like you're 35, man. You don't age a bit. So welcome to the show, everybody, the Rapport Advantage podcast. We are here to help you transform the way you communicate, breaking down those walls of miscommunication and increasing your emotional intelligence every day. That's what we like to do here. So on the show today, I have Mr. Frank Somma, and he is an expert in lots of different things. He's been selling since he was just a wee toddler. He's done just all kind of great stuff. So Frank, you're an author, you're a speaker, and you're an expert. So when you introduce yourself, or when people introduce you by your bio, what's that major tagline that comes along with your expertise, so to speak? Mm-hmm.
What I want to teach people is how to create great relationships and cement long-term loyalty. I want to teach them how to gain instant rapport. And I do this through NLP. So the science that I studied and got my certificate in is called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. That's the same thing, same science that vaulted Tony Robbins to fame, although I am not in that league. But yeah, it's an amazing science about how we communicate. It's kind of the language within the language.
Okay, so a concept that I'm fascinated by is what you call the view from the air versus a view from the ground. So kind of walk us through in terms of what that means, and we'll kind of get into that in terms of the DISC applications from that point.
Yeah, sure. It's really interesting, and I want to hear the DISC take on it. So my view is there are people that you talk to that give you a tremendous amount of detail. So for example, if a ground view person was asked, how was your day this morning? Comes home from work and the spouse says, how was the meeting this morning? The ground view person says, well, I woke up at 10 minutes to 6, which I guess was okay, although I usually get up at 5:45. So I was kind of a couple minutes behind. Then I went downstairs and I was going to make coffee, but the dog looked like she needed to go out. So I brought her outside. And, I know that hole in the fence is too small for her to fit through, but I still worry about it anyway. So I stood there and watched her, which meant that I lost a little more time. But then the coffee was ready. I went upstairs and I noticed when the dog was out, it was kind of raining a little bit. So the outfit I picked out last night for the meeting probably wasn't the right outfit because of the rain. So I figured, let me get another outfit. So I lost a little bit of time there. And then, hey, have you been down by Long Street lately? Did you see that they're doing construction there? Oh my God, I saw the construction. I'm like, I'm never going to make it. I finally got through the construction. I got there. But thankfully, that overhang on the building, I was able to park underneath that. So I didn't get wet. I went in and I made the meeting with about 10 minutes to spare. The air view person.
For one thing, I would just say, land your plane.
Right. Okay. So this is what happens. And I want to talk about the reaction is the most important part of this. So the air view person describes the exact same thing. Hey, how was the meeting this morning? Awesome, man. I got up about 5 minutes late, had to let the dog out, so I was a little nervous at time. But, I got in the car in time. It was a little rainy, grabbed my rain jacket. There's some construction down on Long, but it didn't hold me up. And luckily, I wound up with a really good parking space so I didn't get wet. Made the meeting with 10 minutes to spare. Same story, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. The
problem comes in communication when you have the ground view person talking to the air view person. And what you just said, hey, man, land this plane. The air view person is like, you remember that movie, John Candy and Steve Martin, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Candy's a view from the ground, and Martin says to him at one point, here's a tip for you. When you tell a story, have a point. It makes it better for the people listening, or something to that effect. So it's so the air view person, and what I'd like our listeners to keep in mind is that if you're an air view person listening to a ground view person, they see you nodding your head and your lips starting to move and wanting to jump on their sentence and speak. And they feel completely disrespected. What their brain is saying as you're trying to interrupt them to land that plane, their brain is saying, oh my God, he doesn't want to hear from me. He doesn't think I'm smart. He doesn't think I'm good enough. He doesn't want to listen to me. And on the other side of it, air view people, when you're talking to a ground view person and ground view people who like to get more detail, the air view person, as he's listening to a ground view, let me first say he's bored, land the plane, let's get it done, give me the information. What that person needs to do is slow down just a bit, listen attentively, and understand this communication style. Because once you relax with that person, you can kind of lead them a bit more into your style. On the other side of it, if you're a ground view person and you're listening to an air view person, you're saying, this person doesn't think I'm smart enough to give all the details to it, doesn't care enough to give me all the details. He just zipped through the story without telling me the ins and outs. I must not be important. So that ground view person then, Alex, starts asking more questions. And what does the air view person do? Instead of saying, oh, they want more detail, let me give it to them, the air view person said, what? They don't trust me? They don't think I'm telling the right story? They don't think I'm telling the truth? Why are you asking me so many questions? They get suspicious and they're put off by it. So you have this crash in communication where neither style feels understood by the other. So all I want to do is bring awareness to folks that this exists, and God's lovely joke is always, you are likely one of these styles and your significant other is likely the other.
That's right. And so many times in meeting with CEOs and leaders, we would talk about this whole attraction to opposites because, they fill in our gaps. If I'm a strong person, I don't necessarily want to keep butting heads with another strong person. I want someone kind of softens the edges, so to speak. So, and so your ground level versus the distance from afar in the air is makes a lot of sense from the detail-oriented styles. Like a high C is very detail-oriented, needs that clarity, gives you an email that's 6 paragraphs long when maybe for another style 2 sentences would have sufficed for an answer. And so it's hugely important that we adapt. And we talk about that on the show all the time, understanding yourself and then others, and then adapting to the others around you. So it can't always just be my way, because then you end up with those crashes and roadblocks like you talked about.
Yeah, for sure. And I would suspect that a high D style is likely going to be an air view person, right? Clipped sentences, short, to the point. Don't give me a lot of fluff. Don't give me a lot of things around it. Am I right?
That's correct. So high Ds are direct. If you say, hey, man, did you get the proposal? They'll be like, yep. That's a response to the email. You didn't ask them what they thought. You just said, did you get it? I mean, they've got 20,000 other emails to read. I mean, we're going. Right. So they're all about brevity and execution and efficiency versus that high C is a little bit on the reserve side, but they're more task oriented. And so they're going to they have to have that clarity. And so they're going to give you, oh, yes, I got the proposal. I'll be sending you my response by 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. I'll significantly lay out these 4 bullet points. Boom, 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 boom. And like, dude, that's overwhelming. Right. I didn't necessarily need all that. But so that's a huge standpoint. So from the I perspective, those are the outgoing and people oriented. They're just going to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And so as you well know, those kind of folks, they build rapport through talking. And then you've got those S folks who build rapport by listening. And so it's easy to see those folks when they sit down on a plane beside you. At the moment they sit down, hey, where are you going? That's one of those more outgoing folks versus let me put these headphones on as fast as humanly possible so that I don't have to talk to anybody. Right. So that's that is so cool and so key. So when you're talking about those introductions, Frank, and those first moments, those first impressions and building rapport, what are some of your key tips or takeaways that you tend to share with audiences?
Sure. So when you want to build instant rapport, when you meet somebody for the first time, how many times, Alex, you've experienced this, I'm sure, and listeners, I'll just ask you to do this in your own brain, in your car, or wherever you are, that you met somebody that you just didn't quite care for that much. You didn't say something specific about that person. You just thought, yeah, not right for me. Maybe not my kind of girl, my kind of guy. And I'm going to submit to you that they violated one of these quick steps that I'm going to give you now, these 6 steps. So when you meet somebody, the first thing is you've got to be open. So picture your body wide open, meaning you're standing with your feet about shoulder width. Your hands are not in front of your body in any way, shape, or form. They're outside of the plane of your body, of the view of your body. So you're aiming your heart at the other person's heart. That's what you want to think of. Aim your heart at their heart, and you feel open. And when I'm doing live seminars, I'll bring people up and I'll have them stand sideways, little bit slanted toward me. And then I'll ask them to turn around and open wide up and see, how do you feel the difference? And it's a physical difference. It's a kinesthetic thing. It's real. So first thing is be open. The next thing is make eye contact. So you're open, you make a little bit of eye contact, you stay with that for a beat or two, not 10 beats, like you're trying to, bore out their brain through their eyes like, like an alien, but, just a beat or two, quick eye contact, and then say hello, right? So you're open, you make eye contact, you say hello, and you smile. Smile's a big deal. Maybe even eyebrow flash. Eyebrow flash is very underrated, but they do bring you quick results. People read these things. We're going back to caveman brains now, So you're open, you make eye contact, you smile, you say hi, and then you reach out to shake the hand. Now, a quick commercial on the handshake. It's got to, it's not like Goldilocks, right? Not too hard, not too soft, just right. And gentlemen, when you're shaking hands with a woman, don't do this tips of the finger, I'm a knight returning your handkerchief kind of hand. That's insulting and demeaning. This is a colleague. This is a person who is as capable as you. Shake her hand like you would a man's, albeit maybe not quite as strong. You don't want to try to break everybody's bones when you shake hands either. But a firm, meaningful business handshake is important. Okay, so everybody equal. And then the neat little trick at the end, Alex, is when you shake somebody's hand, you lean in just slightly. Not so much that, I can smell your cologne, but just enough that I create this bit of intimacy. It's kind of unnoticed by the other person, but just this bit of a lean in. And then say their name aloud, say it in your head, and say it aloud again. Because that name, in that moment, hey, I'm Alex. And then you start talking, and then you're like, what did he say? Did he say Phil? That name, you want your brain to be like Velcro, not like Teflon in that moment. So if you say the name and then say it to yourself. So if I met you, I'd be open, eye contact, smile, say hello, shake the hand, lean in a little bit. I'd say, Alex, great to meet you, Alex. In my head, I'd go, Alex, he's Alex. I do that like a little game in my head to make sure that sticks to me. And those are the steps that will make sure that when you meet somebody, they're going to like you, you're going to like them. You're off to the best possible start physically, because what happens, Alex, sometimes, let's say you meet somebody and they're next to you and it's a cocktail party. You just do that, reach your hand over and do that quick shake without turning your body. I'm saying those are the moments when you meet somebody that you don't quite care for. And it's because you violated this system of being wide open.
Yeah, and I think it's about investing yourself into that moment. The cocktail party example is perfect. If you just do that kind of semi-turn, you're not investing your whole self into them, and they're like, well, gosh, you didn't even have the courtesy or the decency to turn and right. They don't say that, but they're thinking that subconsciously in their brain. And I think one of the key things, listeners, you have to understand, what Frank made a point. He went through all of those things. The majority of what he talked about was body language. Yes, you say their name, and yes, you do greet them, but it's about that body language. It's huge. As physical beings, we are looking at cues subconsciously about that openness. And so, if I'm sitting here on the call with Frank right now, and I've got my arms crossed, even though they're below the camera, there's an energy that I'm not giving to that other person and investing versus what I'm doing right now, which is speaking with my hands and kind of leaning forward towards the microphone, which I do naturally when I'm in public because I'm an outgoing person. So I think one of the keys, Frank, is can you give some tips for practicing for our audience members, especially for our reserve types, our C's and our S's, who don't normally come out with energy and want to engage with others in that kind of way?
Yeah, I think the C's and the S's actually have an advantage. So, you and I being high eyes have a certain, and I'm assuming that's you. I know it's you.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's me. Right. So, but I think that the other folks can have some advantage too, especially the S's, because what I've learned over time is, and what I teach salespeople is how to ask questions. I mean, Alex, the old adage, nobody ever said, I hate that guy. All he ever does is listen to me. So it's really about asking good questions. And when when I talk about salespeople, that's my expertise, but I teach a wide variety of audiences, communication skills. And, let's face it, we all have to convince somebody to do something, whether it's to get on board with our project, whether we want to raise, whether you're telling your kid to read a book, or, the veterinarian who's convincing his patients to buy heartworm pills for the dog. We're all convincing someone of something. So these strategies always work. And what I find is, for those folks that aren't quite as outgoing, it's just go through the steps that I just mentioned. Make sure that you introduce yourself properly and then ask questions. My wife is a great example of this because she's opposite style of me, of course. And we would go to business functions. I would take my crew away every year for the big President's Club trip. And she was the boss's wife and everybody's looking at her and wondering about her. So she already felt a little bit weird. And she's an introverted type of person. But what she would do is I said to her, I'd see her in these deep conversations with people. I say, how do you do this? You're telling me that you feel uncomfortable, that it's all business talk. And she'd say, I'd ask if it's a young couple, I ask them how they met. And if it's an older couple with kids, I ask them about the kids. And the key, though, is that Deb is sincerely interested in people's children and sincerely interested in how they met. This is not a gratuitous ask. She is genuinely interested. Her body language shows that she's genuinely interested. And people get to talk about their favorite subject, themselves and their kids.
Yeah, that's huge in terms of being sincere. We talk about that in my topics as well. You don't want to be fake about it, and you want to try to find those things where you have commonalities. And so when I talk to folks in terms of from a business perspective and a sales, you can hop on LinkedIn and find out what people's passions are, causes they're involved with, charitable organizations, see if there's some match there. And you can look at other social media platforms like Twitter or whatever else, and not necessarily define just commonalities, but differences. And so what I mean by that is, as a Tar Heel,
Yes.
I'm always looking for my Tar Heel people out there, but they're the Dookies. We don't like those Dookies very much, and they don't like us very much. And so that creates a conversation. And anytime we're trying to engage and network with folks, we're just trying to start a conversation. We're not selling anybody. We're not stalking anybody. We're just trying to create a conversation. So differences a lot of times can help propel us to that, because if I'm talking to a state guy, you garbage trash over there in Raleigh. So, y'all had won 3 games in 4 years. I said, we stink. But, there's always basketball season. And so that kind of creates a little bit of playful dynamic. And so that's key. But like you said, the S's, they are such great listeners that it's just that, oh, yeah, that sounds wonderful. And then if they've got those follow-up questions which flow naturally from them, then the high I or the high D that leaves that conversation is like, oh, man, that gal or that guy, they are awesome. I mean, and all that person did was just listen to them and let them talk about themselves. Right. So like you said, if we can let other people talk about themselves, that's their most favorite subject to talk about. They love it, and it just kind of feeds it.
Yeah, or their children is big. And remember, when you're talking to a business owner, that business is his baby or her baby. So when you start to, a very funny thing, you've got to, let me mention too, that you need to earn the right to ask deeper questions, right? So this comes, you ask great questions. You don't walk into somebody's office and start, talking about their children. That idea of looking at the picture of, you've got 5 children. Now, as I look at the picture and I say, oh my God, what a handsome family. Is there a contest? Am I Bert Parks? Am I judging your family? It doesn't make sense to me. To me, that's gratuitous nonsense. If you can get into that subject genuinely and you're genuinely interested, that's great. I had a sales guy I trained once, and I was teaching him, get in deeper rapport, man, ask better questions, earn the right, get to know somebody, really look at it. This is what I know about my customer. He likes boating. His dog is named Rex. These are all the things that I have in Frankie's Fabulous 14, So we walk into this office, and the guy is an attorney, and he's got to be, Alex, I don't know, 90, 112. He was the oldest person I've ever seen in my life. And this kid, Mike, is sitting with me, and the old guy walks in, and he's obviously doesn't even want to give us the time. He's bothered. We get in, and Mike looks at him, knowing I want to ask deep questions about report. He goes, so, excuse me, sir, can I just ask you something? Was your father a big influence on you? The guy goes, what the are you talking about? Get out of here, and threw us out. So you've got to earn the right, man. You've got to earn the right.
You can't start, does heart disease run in your family? Because it doesn't mine. That's just you can't open with that.
No, you can't go there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Frank, you're an author as well as I am. Talk to us about your books and what those provide the readers that you have out there.
Sure. So the books that I had published before were all based on my blog. My blog has been going. I started the blog in 2001 when the towers went down. I was running a sales team in New York City. And you couldn't even pick up the phone and call a client because it was considered insensitive to talk about business at a time when the city was just completely devastated and reeling. And we were in Manhattan in Times Square. So I started sending this message out once a week, just kind of a positive, uplifting thing, to keep the troops happier if I was able to influence that. And then it just became a thing. So I published a couple of books that are collections of those essays. And I have a book that's called B2B is Really P2P. How to Win with High Touch in a High-Tech World. And it's a lot of stuff I think, Alex, you'll relate to. It's really about all of these kinds of rapport building techniques and relationships. It's not, one of these sales books about ABC, always be closing. That's the opposite of what I teach. What I teach is be a person, get along with people. And listen, people do business with people they like, and they do business with people they trust. And they do business reciprocally with people that do business with them. And I go through the book and I teach people how to be well-liked, well-trusted, and relied upon.
That's great stuff, Frank. We're going to end there today, and I'd love to have you back on the show because I know that you've got some seriously great tips for negotiations, and our folks are always about that. Like you said, there's always a negotiation going on in your family or in business. So can you get the teenager to go to bed before 11 o'clock? Can you convince your wife, yes, we have enough money in the checking account to take this vacation, we need to go? Or negotiating, trying to keep your fee high as a speaker, or how do we get this sale and not give away the farm? And so I'd love to have you back on the show for kind of a part 2 with Frank, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, let's do it. This is so fun. And I have to again say kudos and listening to you guys. Liz is awesome. And, I've said it before to you in an email. It's like Howard and Robin. I have never heard two people so good. I am thoroughly entertained and educated every time I listen to you.
Well, I appreciate the kudos, and I will pass those along to Liz. Yeah, we kind of a yin and yang with one another. She's super at strategy and vision and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, mission, values. Go take it, Liz, because I can't. That's just not my thing. I'm the entertainer and getting people to be able to communicate more effectively. That's my thing. Appreciate your time today, Frank. And how can folks get in touch with you if they'd like to have you come speak to their organization or association?
Sure. Best bet is to just go to the website. It's franksomma.com, SOMMA, franksomma.com.
Excellent. Well, again, thanks, Frank, for being on the show, and we'll look forward to part 2 coming soon. And we'll hopefully be talking about the new book that's actually out and fresh and people can get their hands on it.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Frank. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for listening to the Rapport Advantage podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Join the conversation on Facebook at The Rapport Advantage and follow us on Twitter at Rapport Podcast.